The late stages of World War II was a desperate time for the Axis powers. Japan was fighting tooth and nail over the islands in the Pacific, and Italy had given up early. Germany was also in a desperate situation. Their once expansive empire over Europe had now crumbled under the combined forces of the US, UK, and USSR. It was around this time that the heads of state in the Third Reich ordered something drastic. A new militia group was to be formed, comprising of relatively untrained civilians. This was the Volkssturm. The Second World War was a numbers game, essentially. The more men, tanks, and planes you had, the more chances you had of winning. Due to this, many armies started forming civilian units who would help out with the war effort. One of the more famous examples of this was the British Home Guard, who you may know as Dad's Army. In the last stages of the war, Germany was in desperate need of troops. Due to them now being defeated constantly by the Allied forces, especially the USSR, they needed men now more than ever. By this point, the Hitler Youth had already begun fighting the Allies, but they still weren't enough. So, Adolf Hitler called for a new militia group. He dubbed this the Volkssturm. This is German for People's Storm. This militia group was officially formed in October 1944. It comprised of men aged 16 to 60 years old. This unit ended up gaining approximately 60,000 members, though unfortunately they were doomed from the start. Volkssturm battalions were usually organised into four main groups: a battalion, a company, a Zug, and a group. However, due to them being a recently trained militia, these guys, they were not prepared for what was happening. Training consisted of a very basic indoctrination and training with rifles like the Kar-98K and later the Volkssturm Gewehr, a last-ditch weapon built by Nazi Germany. In actual battle, their lack of experience really showed. The most significant battle that the Volkssturm took a part of was the Battle of Berlin, in which the by far superior Soviet tank battalions devastated the inexperienced men. Remember, some of these units comprised of 16-year-olds, so this whole thing must have been devastating for them. Understandable. Most, however, chose to fight to the death against the Soviets due to the Soviets having a really terrible reputation when it came to treating prisoners correctly. Now, I may make it sound like the Volkssturm was an unfortunate attempt at driving back the Soviet menace, and yeah, it was, as many unnecessary lives were lost due to this conflict. However, it doesn't make the Volkssturm a truly innocent unit. Before discussing this next chapter, I'm placing a warning down, as this chapter will cover some of the atrocities committed by the Volkssturm. Viewer discretion is advised, so feel free to click off the video. No distressing images will be shown. On several occasions, the Volkssturm would commit horrific acts against groups. A more notable example took place between February and March 1945 at the, apologies for my pronunciation, Styragau. When prisoners there fell ill due to typhoid fever, the Volkssturm systematically murdered them. Under the command of Otto Christandl, again, apologies, I am not German, Volkssturm units assisted the Gestapo and Waffen-SS in evacuating up to 8,000 prisoners. As they marched, they ruthlessly murdered any of those who collapsed from exhaustion. Does that sound familiar to you? Because it sure sounds familiar to me. So, the Volkssturm, Germany's last-ditch attempt at saving the country from defeat. Whilst there is no denying their involvement in horrific atrocities against prisoners, they were an unfortunate result of the desperation of the Nazi Party. From the little training they received to the utter disaster that was the Battle of Berlin, the Volkssturm did not change Germany's war fortunes in the slightest. They were truly too little, too late. This concludes the 3 videos I planned for doing World War II Germany. Next week, I will take a break from the Second World War and go slightly later in the timeline. specifically to the country of China. I'll see you there.